What's going on, everybody? Back with another video, and I'm joined by another guest today, my friend Connor James, UFC expert. I like to call him MMA analyst, another thing you could describe him as. But in all reality, he's a diehard UFC fan, diehard MMA fan in general, and I wanted to have him here to discuss the outcome, talk about the aftermath of UFC 292, one of the craziest cards in a while, especially the main event. We'll get into all of that, but Connor, introduce yourself real quick.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Bogo. I'm the MMA expert here, full-time UFC diehard fan, and it was a very, very interesting card that we saw last night, and I just have a lot of things that I want to say. So, thanks for having me.
Well, we'll get to him. We'll get to him. We'll
All right.
start by saying mainly we're going to talk about the main card. I didn't get to see a lot of the prelims. I only saw like two of them, and I honestly didn't even get to see many of the fights on the main card, just bits and pieces of a couple, and then I saw the main event. So that's why we have Connor here. And this guy, he didn't see the prelims either, but he is going to go back and watch them. He is a diehard. He watches every single fight, not like myself. So we can get his commentary on that if we need in the future, or probably reference it in other videos when we're talking about some of the fighters that were on the prelims. But just to go through it quickly, some of the results that I can just see here that are interesting. One fight was Andre Petroski versus Gerald Mearshart, and that was one that kind of like stuck out to me as being on the early prelims. And I saw Petroski won a split decision, but it could have gone either way. Then moving on to the actual prelims, I did see Brad Katona versus Cody Gibson, which was, of all the prelims, the best fight I could have seen. It was the Ultimate Fighter finale for bantamweight, and it was like one of the best fights I've seen this year so far. It was an absolute war. Katona got the decision. I'm pretty sure both guys are going to get into the UFC, though. I think Dana White said that, so that was a sweet fight. And then the other Ultimate Fighter finale, Kurt Holloway versus Austin Hubbard, was also a sweet fight. And in that one, Holloway showed off his jiu-jitsu because Hubbard's more of a wrestler, and Holloway got him in a triangle. He transitioned from armbar to triangle, and it was a sweet finish, so you need to watch that.
Yeah, we're
Then
kind
going
of
on,
spoiling some
Gregory
of the fights
Rodriguez
for
got
me.
a win. I know I'm spoiling the fights for you, but it's
No,
okay.
it's all right.
Gregory
It's all right.
Rodriguez got a win. He needed to bounce back because he was actually on the rise, and then he got KO'd by like a debut guy in his last fight. So he got a nice win. And then Chris Weidman made his comeback, and I didn't see it, but I did see like a moment where he was like pointing at him. I saw this on social media. He was like pointing at him and talking trash. So I think he showed a good fight, but he still lost all three. And I'm pretty sure he's tore his knee up at the end of the fight as well. So it
Yeah.
might be the last fight in Chris Weidman's career. Who knows? But now we're at the main card, and we're going to start from the bottom and get to the top. So starting at the bottom, we have Chito Vera versus Pedro Munoz. Chito Vera won a unanimous decision. And let's get your thoughts on that fight, Connor.
Yeah, so it was actually a pretty close fight, I think. I think Cheeto really pulled away in the third round. That was definitely the most definitive round where you could see he inflicted like the most damage. He really beat up Pedro with the jab. But honestly, I'm like shocked by some of the scorecards because I had Pedro winning a decision going into it because I know
Wow.
because Cheeto's kind of he's been known to be a slow starter, and I thought Pedro could come up with a sneaky dub. But I honestly like I'm okay with Cheeto winning, but the first two rounds were like super close. And if you watch the fight, you can even I'm pretty sure like Joe and DC both say like very interesting judging on the scorecards because it was like 30-27 on like at least two of the judges' scorecards, which is insane because
Yeah,
I
it
think
was on two scorecards,
yeah,
30-27.
and I'm pretty sure like Pedro like definitively won the second, and the first round was like pretty boring, but if anything, I gave it to Pedro like live when I was watching it just myself. So then when I saw the fight end, I was like, Pedro's gonna win this because the scoring system in the UFC is kind of it's skewed. Like I do think the right guy won the fight because Marlon like he inflicted the most damage, but it was only in the third round.
Okay.
So it was if you go based off of UFC judging, I think Pedro won the first two and like just barely, and then Cheeto just like definitively won the third, but then he got a
Yeah.
unanimous decision. So that was kind of a crazy.
So pride
Um,
rules.
yeah,
Pride rules, it would be Cheeto. But
right.
you're
Yeah,
saying there's an argument to be made that for like the UFC judging, Munoz could have got the decision. Wasn't he using a lot of leg kicks in this fight on Cheeto?
Yeah, yeah, he was. And he was honestly like the first two rounds, it was just like a lot more volume. Like he was just a lot throwing a lot more stuff
Okay.
out there. And even though him and Cheeto were probably landing at the same rate, it just like just by the eye test, it looked like Pedro was winning the fight, but didn't go his way.
Okay. And so, I mean, would you say this is Cheeto's like a really good performance? Because from a guy that didn't watch the whole fight and have just heard stuff in the aftermath, it didn't sound like a great performance from Cheeto, but obviously it was a win. And coming off a loss, you always want to get a bounce back win like that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it was a solid win because he did look like the Cheeto that he's been talking himself up to be in the third round, but only the third round. Like it was just
Okay.
the classic like slow start for Marlon Cheeto Vera. You know what I mean? And if it was 5 rounds, then he probably could have
Yeah.
won like, way more definitively. But definitely not the fight that you win that will get you a title shot in almost like 90% of cases. But
Yeah.
because of the division, because of the circumstances, because of all the
Except
injuries
for this.
that are
And we'll get into
happening,
that.
I think he might be next. Yeah. So, but besides that, if it wasn't for like the state of the bantamweight division now, like I would say he would still be like 2 wins away from like a title fight if it was just like pure competition based. No.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And like you said, we'll get back into Cheeto Vera in a little bit. The next fight, we don't have to spend a lot of time on this one. Mario Bautista faced Damon Blackshear. I
Mhm.
know Bautista was supposed to face Cody Garbrandt, and he probably would have got a way bigger, like hyped up performance, assuming that he beats Cody Garbrandt because Bautista's on the rise and Garbrandt's kind of been downhill recently. But Blackshear had to come in on short notice, and I saw that Bautista won a split, or not a split decision. He won a unanimous decision, but it was a close fight, right?
Yeah, another fight where I was like, dang, like I thought I had it going the other way when it went to the scorecards. Like I had
Okay.
Blackshear winning the fight. And it was another like, oh god, like the judges are just gonna be freaking stupid this card, and it just wasn't looking good because the first two fights on the main card, I thought were not like robberies, but just they didn't go to the maybe the Marlon and Pedro fight was a little bit different. I think this one was more of a robbery, honestly, than the Cheeto and Pedro fight
Interesting.
because from what I remember Blackshear like he had control like the first 2 rounds, like the majority of the first 2 rounds. And to give Bautista, I think it was the first round because I think he won 30-27 on a couple of the cards. When I heard 30-27, I was like, okay, it's definitely going to be Blackshear because the third round
Blackshear.
was a little close, but I probably would have given it to Bautista. But Bautista or Blackshear, I thought he clearly won the first round. It was insane. So yeah, like I don't know, not really. Hopefully he doesn't get like he doesn't get too far set back because he took the fight on 7 days notice, and he I don't think he deserved to lose the fight, and I think the matchmakers will be able to see that when they give him his next fight. But yeah, not really that
Yeah.
impressed
Blackshear
with
you're talking about.
yeah, Blackshear. Not really that impressed with the way that Bautista got that dub. I think he is a good prospect, but and he was preparing for a different fighter. But yeah, kind of just like a stale fight in my opinion. Like that doesn't really help either guy that much.
Yeah, and that was the thing. You do have to say for Bautista's argument here, he did have to face a completely different style fighter. He had to face a more like wrestling heavy fighter versus
Yeah,
Cody, who's a more stand up guy. He was probably trying to knock him out. I don't think it sets either guy back too much, especially because you mentioned Blackshear came on short notice, super short notice, and it doesn't set him back, but it kind of like has to set our expectations for Bautista a little bit differently. Like, yes, he does look like a really good prospect, and I think Blackshear seems like a pretty decent prospect too.
yeah,
But we just have to realize, okay, Bautista, he's not going to get a super fast rise because it seemed like they were kind of the original fight they had with Cody Garbrandt. They were almost setting him up to get him into the top 15 soon, or at least get him a top 15 matchup, build his
yeah,
name, and put him on a pay per view. Now it seems like okay, he still got the dub. Like that's the most important thing, get the win in MMA, but he's going to have some more work to do before he really starts competing with the top 15. So, I mean,
Yeah.
overall, interesting like prospect matchup. But let's get into the next one with a bigger prospect and a guy that I don't think you're a huge fan of, and Ian Gary. He dominated this fight on the scorecards. He won two 30-26s and he won a 30-24, which like you never see that. He
That was
got
the
10-8s in
first
every single round
30-24
ever. Okay, there
ever.
you go.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is another short notice fight. Ian Gary was supposed to fight Jeff Neal, which would have been a sick fight. And I actually was predicting Neal to probably KO him in that fight.
Same.
But they obviously didn't get in the Cajun fight. He fought Neil Magny, a veteran who's pretty much like the litmus test for anybody to get into like the top 12. You kind of have to beat Neil Magny to like show that, okay, I'm probably top 10, top 12 worthy. And then I think like Jeff Neal, I heard this out somewhere else on another podcast. Jeff Neal is almost, so Neil Magny is like 10 to 12 gatekeeper. And then Jeff Neal is like the top 5 gatekeeper, where it's like if you can beat Jeff Neal, okay, you're probably top 5 worthy at least. So
That's fair. Yeah.
maybe that fight's next anyways, but let me know what you thought about this fight. Like break it down for us and then talk about Ian Gary, where you think he can go.
Yeah, so the fight, it really was like totally one-sided. Like from the I'm pretty sure it was like from the very first leg kick that Gary threw, Neil Magny was reacting to it. You know, like you could already, I don't know what it was. Like at first I thought maybe it was like uh, a pre-fight injury that he was dealing with, but he hasn't said anything about it. So I guess it was just the first leg kick just really hit him in the right spot. But yeah, it was
Yeah,
just total domination. But to be honest, I'm not that impressed with it because you get a guy on one leg by like the end of the first round. Like it was definitely in the second round. He had like his leg was ruptured. Like he was on one leg in the second round. And how do you not put that guy
yeah,
away? You know what I mean? Like, dude, you're talking all this hype. Like, go for the finish. Like, go for that highlight reel knockout. And the fact that he just wasn't applying that pressure and he just wasn't able to, it shows the grit and the toughness of Neil Magny for him to like still stay in the fight, but also just shows
for
like
sure. For sure.
I don't know, like to me it shows like Ian Gary, like he's good, don't get me wrong, but like you put him against like the top guys at welterweight, like Shavkat, I don't think he stands a chance against him. And
Woo!
I think that the guy he called out, Wonder Boy, who I heard Wonder Boy Dana said Wonder Boy
He
uh
declined it.
declined the fight, yeah, in the press conference. So they were trying to make that fight like right away. But I don't know, like I think that's a good fight for Wonder Boy, to be honest. I think Wonder Boy will cook him, you know? Like his striking, I think is
Well, Wonder Boy showed he showed in his fight against Kevin Holland that even though he's older, if you don't put him against a grappler, he will still piece you up. So, I mean, I
definitely.
think my thing is like Ian Gary, I've never been sold on him yet because he talks so much and everybody just hypes him up because he's from Ireland.
Yeah.
But he has shown that he's getting better in all of his fights, and he does seem to be pretty well rounded. Like he hasn't been taken down and dominated in grappling. He is a good striker. We all know that. So it's obvious that he's a good fighter. But I do agree with you right now. I mean, he's got to be the UFC's got to be careful here, and I think Dana White, even kind of based off of listening to his post fight, he was like giving Gary his credit and his flowers for his domination last night, but he was hesitant. Like everybody was like, okay, when are you going to make him the main event in Ireland? All this stuff. And Dana
Mm-hmm.
White was still kind of hesitant, which made me think, okay, he saw kind of what you saw, where it's like, yes, you got a dominant victory over Neil Magny, but he didn't see that next level in him. And you need to be at that next level if you're going to try to compete with the guys in the top of the division. And
Yeah.
so like, just get back to my point. I agree with you that I think he's going to have trouble. I mean, even if they make that Jeff Neal matchup, I honestly think Neal probably KOs him. I mean,
Yeah.
that fight with Shavkat showed me how good Neal is. It showed me how good
Um,
Shavkat is too. But the fact that Neal had a war with him, I mean, I don't see Gary coming out of that
Yeah,
standing.
and in that fight, Jeff Neal was like a couple pounds overweight, but I'm pretty sure it was because he was dealing
Yeah.
with like an injury or like he was or a sickness or something. He definitely had something going on in that fight, and he still had like an amazing outing against Shavkat. So,
Yeah.
but
So
back
we'll see
back.
what happens with Gary. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I was just gonna say back to Gary. Like I kind of what like I wasn't totally sold on the hype train on like how good he was, but I was a fan of him. You know, like I was like, yeah, this guy he you know, he's building a character. Like he's he's attracting more viewers. He's trying to become like a real staple in the game um by showing his personality and stuff. And I liked how he was doing it at first by like not replicating what Connor did, but like showing homage to him, you know? Like in one of his first fights,
Yeah.
he was very humble, you know? And he was just like telling us like what he was going to do, what his plan was. And he was doing it like in a very like down to earth way by and just saying like, "Yo, I'm simply the best and I'm going to show it." But this fight totally turned me off against him, bro. Like how do you start beef with like the nicest guy in the UFC? Like Neil Magny is I'm not gonna say he's the most beloved, but like he's like one of the most respected guys in the sport. You know, he has more welterweight wins than
100%.
GSP. He has the most welterweight wins ever, and all because this guy made one little comment. Ian Gary decides to like take that and totally turn it against him just to play up on this like just so Gary could try to paint himself as like the hero. And dude, it like if you haven't seen the interview with Neil Magny, like literally all he says, he doesn't even say it like a threat or anything. He literally just like talking about like someone asked him about like his matchup going against Ian Gary, and he was like, "Yeah, I fought a bunch of guys that are upcoming prospects, a lot of young guys, but I've been in this game for a while, so I think that this is just going to be like one of those grade school whoopings, or like when a dad has to put his kid into place, like when he's thinking he's all that, you got to give your kid like a little whooping to just show him like, still who's boss." And like that was it. Like, and Ian Gary took that and just totally ran with it and just tried to make Neil out to be like some like kid beater, which is totally crazy. And like I just
Yeah.
don't respect how Ian Gary took that because if you look at the press conference too, like that was him like trying to be like McGregor, like literally just trying to be like him, like the things he said at the press
Yep.
conference, like shut your mouth, like like bro, you're not him, like be your own guy, you know. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
I don't
I know, I see your point, and honestly, I did hear like he said like you'll do nothing like McGregor.
yeah
That's just so cringy.
I know
And I also was listening to a little bit of his post-fight press conference last night, and he was talking wild. Don't get me wrong, it's kind of cool to see a fighter have confidence. All the fighters have confidence, but certain guys have way more confidence. Like obviously everybody's gonna point to McGregor and other fighters like that. And Gary, like it's great. It's awesome to see a guy confident and go out and like get a victory. But he was talking wild last night. It was like way too much. It crossed the line from extreme confidence to cocky. And
hmm
in fighting, look, we can get all annoyed about how cocky he is, and he can keep showing us that he is just a super legit fighter. But as a fan, it made me be like, okay, this guy's super cocky. Like I want to see him get humbled. And like I said before, I'm gonna keep going back to it. Like the next fight I want to see from him is Jeff Neal, because I literally think Jeff Neal can leave that dude face down, ass up, and make him reevaluate how great he thinks he really is. But let's move on to the next
yeah
fight. Zhang Wei Li defended her belt against Amanda Lemos. Pretty dominant fight. Like again, 50-43, 50-44, and then a 49-45. I know Lemos had a submission that like Joe Rogan was going crazy about, like, oh, it's tight, but honestly, I had the fight on in the background, and I saw Whaley just dominating with wrestling, and then on the feet there wasn't really much like contest either. So give me your breakdown of like what actually happened in the fight, and then we can get into other matchups for Whaley after that.
yeah so just real quick, I just want to say on the last thing on Ian Gary, I think it's close. Like he's teetering on becoming like a new Patty Pimblett, like, and he doesn't want to do that,
That's a good
you know.
comparison. Yeah.
So he has to be very careful. Just that similar trajectory of how everyone just totally is turned off on Paddy Pimblett after he was like rising super fast. He has to be careful. He has to take it down a notch. But to the Zhang Weili fight, yeah, she totally showed like how dominant she is. She really like excelled in the grappling, like in the wrestling. She was just able to take her
Yeah.
down like a bunch of times and just totally control Amanda Lemos. And first of all, I don't think Amanda Lemos even deserved to be in there because she was ranked like number 5, and then you have like Yan Xiaonan who's number 3, and like could have been China versus China. Maybe that's the next matchup, but I don't even think she really deserved to be in there. But with that being said, she's still a top 5 fighter. Like all respect to her. And she did like she has power in that right hand. And she did showcase that a couple times, where she landed a couple good shots on Zhang Weili, but she just showed a deficit in the ability to stand up when she's on her back and just ground game overall. She did have a couple submission attempts. It was she went for a few Darce chokes actually, and one of them, the announcers were kind of freaking out about it, and it did look kind of tight, but she didn't have her legs. Um, she didn't have her. She wasn't using her legs with it, so it's not like she wasn't
Yeah.
in John Lee's guard. So it didn't look like it was gonna stick. It just looked tight, just from where her arm and John Whaley's head was. But Whaley got out of it, and it would have been cool to see her put Amanda Lemos away. But I guess that goes to show like the toughness of Amanda Lemos. So credit to her for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, just dominant fight for Zhang Weili, and I think she's gonna stay on top for a while.
I definitely agree with you on that. The thing about Zhang Weili, it's sick about her is she fight like I don't know how to say this. She fights like a guy, if that makes sense. A lot of girls like they don't really have power in their hands or they don't have strength. So when you fight, like there's always something that makes you realize it's a female fight. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
you don't
I
feel
know.
that threat of finishing the fight at all times. You don't see the power in their combinations. You don't see the smoothness of like transitioning between kicks, takedowns, like all that different stuff. Wei Li is like one of the female fighters where it's like this chick is a savage everywhere.
Yeah,
Her
she's
kicks are
so
so
quick.
strong. She hits super hard. She has such good speed, like hits hard, speed. Now she's showing wrestling, which like was not one of her strong suits before. Clearly, she's like improving
Yeah,
on that, making that a focus. She's dominant everywhere. And like you said, I agree. I think she's going to be on top for a little while. The Rose L's are so weird. I did think she won the second fight. It was a close fight. And the first one, she did get caught with that head kick. It's weird because I feel like if she rematched Rose again, which I'm not suggesting that we do because Rose is like completely out of the picture right now. She's not fighting.
yeah,
But just on a hypothetical, I would pick Whaley. I feel like she is the best female fighter right now. I have to say that. I mean, I
hundred
could
percent.
not really pick anyone above her as the best female fighter. So it was a sweet fight. I'm hoping that she wins again. I mean, I think people are talking about that Tatiana Suarez matchup like down the line. I do agree with you. I think she should fight Yan Xiaonan next, and she's probably going to take her down and dominate her. But that's besides the point. Should be the matchup, and yeah, it was a sweet fight. Anything else on it?
Yeah, I do think that should be the next matchup, just because even though both Yan Jianan and um, Tatiana Suarez, Tatiana Suarez's both of their last wins were Jessica Andrade. Um, I think Yan Jianan, it was just a more impressive. She KO'd her, and she also did that like before
Yep.
Suarez did. So that also kind of means something. Um, and she's also ranked higher, and I think it's just a good matchup. I think Yan Jianan actually has a legit chance. Definitely a different style matchup, and they should bring UFC to China, make that maybe a fight night headliner, and that would be a banger matchup.
Yeah. Okay, we're through the co-main. Now let's get to the meat and potatoes of this card. And let me speak my piece here because I have been. I mean, I know a lot of people are fans of this guy, like all the casuals, but I have been a supporter of this guy for a long time. This man showed me his first fight against Chito Vera, and that was my introduction to Sean O'Malley. because I wasn't a MMA fan for a while. But this guy, I have been since I became a fan of MMA. I've been hyping this guy up forever, telling everybody because for as many fans as he has, a lot of people have doubted him. They called him the Can Crusher. They say that he has everything undeserved. Didn't fight anybody. Everybody thought he was going to get killed by Peter Yan. I was like, this guy's going to win. Everybody thought he was going to lose to Aljamain Sterling. And I don't know. I just saw this guy and I said, look, he has that it factor. Everybody knows it. Like when Dana White said that. And I just feel like he always ends up rising to the occasion. He has crazy power in his hands. I feel like his striking has been extremely underrated. And now people are starting to realize, like, look, this guy is not just a flashy striker that he started on the Contender Series with crazy kicks and spinning attacks. But he's starting to refine his game to the point where his striking is up there with the best, in my opinion. I think you can put it next to some of the most high-level strikers. Now, he has more to do, but to get to that level of like the Izzy's, and honestly, like even people wouldn't consider Volk a crazy high-level striker, but Volk has really good technique and he knows when to like attack.
Wonder
He
Boy.
has really good jab. Other fighters on that level, even McGregor, Dustin Poirier. So it's different style for sure, but O'Malley's striking is up there. And so even though he hadn't fought the guys that Sterling fought, even though he got taken down a bunch by Peter Yan, I was always backing this guy, even when Connor here had significant doubts. But I just want to say Sean O'Malley is the champion now. He KO'd Sterling in the second round. That was one of the craziest KOs in a long time because like all the casuals came out last night. Everybody was super hyped for this
That's for
fight,
sure.
and it was a crazy, unexpected KO. Similar to McGregor KOing Aldo when he steps back with the left hand. O'Malley KOs Aljo, the guy that was a dominant champion, with the right hand step back. I don't know. There's parallels, but let me know your thoughts on that fight.
Yeah, I mean, you could say there's similarities, but I don't like the McGregor comparisons for O'Malley, and like they're bound to be there. They're bound to happen. But I think I don't know. I just feel like I mean I guess it does make sense because it's like they're both strikers and they both have like
Yep,
um I guess one punch knockout power.
for sure.
Um
Yeah.
but I think I don't know. I just don't think it's going to age well if O'Malley keeps getting compared to Connor because it wasn't just the fighting that made McGregor so big. It was the way that he was able to build himself up, how he would talk the talk and then he would back it up. And like I'll get into the fight, but I'll just go over this real quick. Like that's why I can't compare the two is because McGregor can talk smack. He can carry a press conference. In my opinion, bro, like O'Malley, he didn't seem like he was ready for the limelights, you know? Like at the press conference, if you watch the whole thing, like bro, like he was kind of like boring almost. Like not like he had a bunch of scripted stuff and like but he's not quick-witted, you know? He's not able to like to
No,
take a response and then respond to it like McGregor can, you know?
I 100% agree with that. And let me say, the comparisons, I do like the comparisons to Connor in certain respects, but I 100% see you. And I'm not comparing him to Connor. Like, nobody's ever going to be Connor again. That
Yeah.
has to be said. But nobody, I don't think that he is like Connor in many ways, but I think it's the fact that there are some similarities that cause people to compare him to him. Like, obviously, like you said, striker, up and coming guy that a lot of people like. He has a lot of haters and a lot of casual fans too. And I think that's why people compare is like the star level of O'Malley. He does it in a different way. Connor, like you said, had great trash talk and he was like predicting his fights, getting KOs, all that stuff.
Yeah.
O'Malley does it in a little bit different way. He has the colorful hair. He has like the crazy tattoos, similar to kind of like McGregor, that chest. Like it was just different at the time when McGregor came out with these crazy tattoos and talking like an Irish person. I agree with you. O'Malley doesn't have the best trash talk, but he kind of does it in different ways. He pulls up with like pink Lamborghinis and face tattoos and he streams and smokes weed. So it's like his own brand. So it's definitely different than Connor, but the level of star power and the fact that they're both strikers, I think is what's the best comparison because even though O'Malley's far from being on Connor's level. He does have that buzz about him, that it factor that I spoke about before, that I think not many people have had. And he has a chance to get up towards that Connor tier, in my opinion. But get into the fight and any other comments you want to make on that.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying, and I agree. I do agree with that. Like he has the similar star power. Um, I just don't think he can ever reach McGregor level. I think that he can. I guess for maybe this era of the UFC, he could be um, one of the I guess like one of the faces of this era. He
Yep.
definitely has potential for that. Um, but he'll never be McGregor. He'll never be the same level as him. Like even it's pretty much like too late, I think, in his career, because like the thing that made McGregor like skyrocket was
He's
that
only
first
28.
first. That's true, but like the I know the similarities between the Jose Aldo knockout and this Aljamain Sterling knockout, but like the fact that McGregor did it in like 10 seconds, you know what I mean? He already wasn't able
Yeah.
to do that. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, he could definitely um, be a huge star, be one of the biggest stars in the UFC. But to me, like McGregor will always be like the biggest, and you know, let's not forget the not the goat of fighting, but like the goat of
Absolutely.
the
Absolutely.
UFC, right? So into the fight now.
I agree.
I I've got the fight playing on in the background right now. Um, First round, um, pretty nothing really happening, and like it was pretty funny because when I was watching it, I was just thinking like when it went all the way down to like the final like minute, I was just like, like this is really how the fight's gonna go. Like I was like criticizing both of them because I was like, how is Aljamain not shooting on him yet? And why is like I understood a little bit more why O'Malley was being hesitant because he was scared for the takedown, so he was kind of going off for the counter. But still, I was like, dude, like no one's doing anything at all, and who the hell is O'Malley to call Sandhagen boring when this is the first round that he gives us? That was what was going through my head when I was watching it live. So that's what I
Okay.
was thinking. And then second round comes along, and I'm pretty sure it's
Wait,
like
actually,
within.
really quick, let me
Yeah, go
let me
ahead.
say my thoughts on that first round too, because I want to get that in before you get into the second round. I agree. The first round was a little bit shocking. I start like halfway through, I was like, oh no, this is going like the Pedro fight where O'Malley wasn't really doing anything. But I think you hit the nail on the head right there. After a while, I was like, okay, I could see he wants to counter right now because he's so worried about that takedown. He was really
Mhm.
looking to counter, but I agree with you. It was weird why Aljo wasn't shooting, but I think the best explanation was in that first round, even though a lot didn't happen, like Aljo threw some leg kicks, O'Malley like landed one or two like nice jabs, and then at the very end, Aljo went for a takedown. But one thing that really stuck out to me in the first round was like, oh my gosh, Sean has him like really biting on feints. Like you could see the speed and the quickness of O'Malley
Yeah,
was messing with Aljo because he couldn't figure out a way to time a shot. His feints were so on point, and also his movement, like his footwork in that first round was crazy. And I was like, okay, in my head as an O'Malley fan, like rooting for him in this fight, I even though it was boring, like I think at one point they started to boo, and I'm like, dude, we got to get something going here. I still had confidence after that first round because Aljo could not find an opening because of the feints that he was throwing at him. But yeah, we'll then get into the second round because that's where the big moment happened.
yeah. So second round starts, and I'm pretty sure it's like within the first like 20 seconds. He Aljo goes in for a punch, and then O'Malley just puts him down right on his butt. He didn't do that. He didn't do that. He didn't sleep him because he was still very much
Oh, this
awake.
guy. Oh
Now
man.
he put him down. He sat him down. Okay, I'm not gonna deny that, and because he hit him with a great shot.
Bad. Bad too.
Yeah, he hurt him because you see his face. His face was he was wearing that damage, and also the ground and pound was good. The few shots that he did land, the ones that he did hit, they freaking stung. Like you could tell. But I will say this, and I don't think that I'm in the
Um,
minority. early stoppage, dude. Early stoppage. Come on. Like, and
Dude,
I don't like having to say this. Like, I wish O'Malley could have just like clean KO'd him and it would have been totally undisputed that he won the fight and he put the champ to sleep. But dude, if you watch this fight, like, yes, he had him hurt. But dude, it's the second round, and that's the first shot that landed. That's the very first shot that landed, and he didn't go to sleep. He was still very much awake. It was only until Aljo like turned his back that they stopped the fight. And it's like, dude, he's the champ. Like, you got to give him a chance. Like, yeah, he did give him like somewhat of a chance, but come on now, like, you got to let him fight until he can't anymore. You know, like I said this with the Israel Adesanya and Pereira fight when Izzy first lost the belt. Like, a lot of people were okay with that stoppage, and Izzy was okay with that stoppage, just like Aljo's okay with this stoppage. Well, they're respectable champs, you know, and they respect how they respect their competitors and whatnot. But just from a fan's point of view, like, you wanna see it go to the very end, the very bitter end, because who knows, what if Izzy could have came back and just stayed alive, and then he would have kept the belt, or if he would have just kept him in the fight, then he would have been put out cold. That would have been cool to see too, because don't like Izzy. And then Aljo, like, that was the second round, dude. It was the second round. Like, who's to say that he would have just lost that round and then gotten back up and then dominated the last three rounds? Like, I think that it was an early stoppage. I'm not trying to take that much away from O'Malley, but it's like, damn, like another fight where it's like, dude, it's all these top fights that O'Malley's been having. It's there's always like some stipulations to the fights where I don't want them to be there, but they're just there, you know? So
okay, I see your argument, but I do think you are in the minority here. And like you mentioned it, the main reason why it's not an early stoppage, in my opinion, is because Aljo like didn't even protest it at all. I get Marab said it and Joe Rogan said it, but most fans online, like that I've seen in any comment section, most people on the podcast that I'm listening to, like nobody has a problem with the stoppage when you look at it. And when I think you look at it, actually, I do think that was he landed a huge shot, hurt him bad, and it was. I think he got a fair chance to defend himself because it was another like 15 seconds before the ref stepped in. And I get it, he was throwing his legs up, but he ate like at least a dozen unanswered shots on his back. And at a certain point, it's not getting better. I see your argument, but I think it's a fair stoppage because he landed a lot of ground and pound. Even though it all wasn't in succession and all wasn't defenseless, he dropped them really bad and landed a bunch of unanswered ground and pound. One of them, like right before the stoppage, too, he bounced his head off the canvas with like a really good right hand. So I think it was a fair stoppage, but I kind of do see your point. And before we go too long on this podcast, I want to quickly talk about O'Malley here. Like, I personally see him as, I know a lot of people are not going to believe it, or they're going to doubt him, but I see that him as a guy that could actually reign for a little while here. I think he's going to be a tough guy to beat based off of his like size advantage at bantamweight, his speed, his striking ability. I think he could defend the belt for a little while. But I want to know what you think about, how good of a champion he's going to be and then who you want his next matchup to be.
yeah, I mean, I think I think Aljo could be deserving of a rematch if he like really was trying to fight for one. Um, I don't think the UFC wants an instant rematch by any means, really. I really think the UFC is going to try to push for the Cheeto rematch. I think that's going to be the next title fight, even though, like, when it comes down to like, um, I guess competition and like just the structure of how a sport should be, it shouldn't be Cheeto next, you know. But considering how they were able to book Strickland versus Adesanya, I think they're probably going to do O'Malley versus Cheeto maybe early next year. If not, I think the next most deserving, like if you just go most deserving, the next fight should be um, Sanhagen. I mean, either Sanhagen or Marab, but if I think they're both equally deserving. You just go with the more entertaining guy, the more interesting fight at Sanhagen. I think Sanhagen versus O'Malley is a great matchup. That's probably the best matchup to make right now in the division. Um, but I mean, he's hurt, and then I'm pretty sure Marab is also like kind of dinged up, and then I think Cejudo. I mean, I
He
don't think they're
is.
going to get
Yep.
yeah, Cejudo. He pulled out of the fight against Cheeto, so he's hurt, and he also just lost the title shot after 2 years layoff. So it's not like they're going to throw him back in there. Um, it's like the only guy next, if unless they want to hold out O'Malley, which I doubt they're going to want to do. It's probably Cheeto, which is like so weird. And in that fight, I think O'Malley freaking KOs him. I think he shows he's like way better than Cheeto. I honestly think he is, because Cheeto was barely able to get uh beat Pedro. I mean, even though O'Malley got a no contest against Pedro and didn't win or lose against him, you know, we didn't even get to see the
Yeah.
fight. But I think O'Malley is a lot better than Cheeto for sure. And then if that's the next fight, he's gonna win. And then the fight after that, if it's Sanhagen, I think O'Malley does have a chance to win that for sure. I will be rooting for Sanhagen. But yeah, that's a fight he could win. And then I think after that,
Yeah.
that could be maybe when he fights like a Marab, maybe who knows where Umar Nurmagomedov is going to be at that time? Who knows where Song Yadong is going to be at the time? I think once he gets past maybe his hypothetical second defense, if he gets there, that's when the challenges are really going to get tough. So I don't know if he's going to be able to break that mold. But yeah, I think if it's Cheeto Sanhagen, he could be here for a decent amount of time.
Yeah. No, I like your breakdown there.
And there's
I
also
get
the
what you
Young
mean with the
rematch, by the way.
Cheeto
Sorry.
as like not being the most deserving. That too. That too. So yeah, like you said, Cheeto's not the most deserving based off of just wins and losses, but they got to do this fight, man. We've been wanting this Cheeto rematch for like a while now, and I always kept saying you have to do the Cheeto rematch for the belt. Like whoever has it, it has to be for the belt. And the hype on this fight is going to be crazy, man. They can show the highlights of his big toe hitting his nerve and hurting his foot, and they can show all the trash talk between them and O'Malley saying he didn't lose. Like it's the most O'Malley's gonna sell a lot of pay-per-views, and this is a perfect matchup to start his reign as like a quote unquote pay-per-view king for the UFC, because he really is probably gonna be their biggest pay-per-view draw besides Conor right now. So I can't wait for that fight. We've been going for almost 45 minutes, so I do want to wrap it here. But overall, great night of fights. The main event was crazy. Like there's going to be so much that's going to come out of this as far as like online content, podcasts, like reaction videos. There's a ton that's going to come from this. And I think we're starting a new reign, like a new era at least, whether he becomes a champion for a long time or not. This is like an era of big fights for the bantamweight division, which, like you said, is filled with killers. So
Yeah.
overall, sweet card. And there's some bangers coming up soon. So thank you for joining. And any last words before we get out of here?
Yeah, I definitely think that O'Malley winning this fight is better for the division. It opens it up a lot more for a lot bigger fights. I will say, if it is Cheeto versus O'Malley next, like everybody and their mothers better hope that O'Malley wins, because if Cheeto wins the title, chaos. Like, and not only
Yeah.
chaos, just it would not make any sense. You know, like it would just throw the UFC just totally through a massive loop, and I would not like that. So I'll be rooting for O'Malley if it's him versus Cheeto. Um, it was a fun card. I didn't get to watch it live. I had to watch it because I was working. I had to watch it like later on at night. So I was like hiding from my phone, trying to not see any spoilers. And I like went on Snapchat and I saw someone's story, and I only saw like Aljamain throwing a punch on the TV, but then I like backed out of it really quick. So I thought that like he won the fight. So I genuinely was like shocked when it happened. So
That's awesome.
it was a pretty cool experience. But yeah, fun fight, and I look forward to the upcoming fights these next couple weeks, and see what's next with O'Malley. And yeah, thanks for having me, Bogo.
Yeah, for sure. We'll have you back on. You'll be my UFC guy for all the combat sports fans out there. But yeah, we're gonna wrap it here. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed. Connor, once again, thank you for coming on, and we'll see you guys soon. Peace.
Peace.
Bang bang. Let's go.
That was